If you look at a compliance audit like Mount Everest, you've got to hike up it. But doing that by yourself without somebody who's experienced, you can lead to a world of disaster. So we're a hired Sherpa. When you get to the strategic side of things, I find that in the cybersecurity world, there is a lot of folks that are basically doing the chicken little. The sky is falling, your company's going to die tomorrow if you don't get everything that we sell. And that's just not the case.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams. All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. So glad you are here with us today. I'm really excited and honored to have our guest today on this episode. Now, funny story, I actually met him through a networking group called Success Champions Networking. It's a B2B group, great group. If you haven't looked it up, go ahead and look it up. But we had a once a year event in DFW, and I was part of the podcast panel. And one of the things they did was very much like America's Got Talent. They had us panelists turn around and listen to 60-second pitches from the audience. And one of my favorite was that of Joshua Wathen. He's the COO of Triad InfoSec. He's the owner of Dukes Fortis LLC, member of the board of advisors for Owners in Honor. And he had a very interesting intro, which I will let him tell you guys about. Joshua, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here.
So walk us through that intro that you had, because it immediately made me turn around, especially when you said the part about teenagers. I've got 2.5 myself. I'll explain the half.
Yeah, so they gave us, I don't remember if it was 60 seconds or 90 seconds, but you got a little bit of time to pitch. And I said that teenagers are a lot like dogs. Everywhere they go, they leave a mess. They make a lot of noise. They don't clean anything up. And when you tell them something they don't like, they kind of tilt their head and look at you like they don't speak English. And typically when my son does that,
that was my son right now.
That's what they do. So when my son does that, and I ask him why he did that, 8 times out of 10, he's going, well, my friends did that. You know, I told the crowd the same thing that I tell my son. I'm not here to train you to think like everybody else. I'm here to train you to think like a Green Beret. And in order to do that, you have to tell the truth. You have to be of service, and you have to not ask somebody else to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And I find the same thing is true when we talk to CEOs and leadership in companies about cybersecurity, that everyone is watching you. And they're going to do what you do. In order for you to have good results and for a plan to work, you've got to tell the truth. You have to be of service, and you have to not ask anybody to do anything you wouldn't do yourself.
I love it. I love the philosophy. You know, I've been in business 15 years now. I'm sure you've been in business for some time now after your service. Yeah, that's the way to go, man. I mean, it comes back to that every single time, right? Once you realize, hey, something's not going well, and you evaluate it and you realize, hey, if I'm not willing to do this myself, or I don't like this part of the business, why am I asking somebody else to do it, right? And so with that being said, how does an accomplished Green Beret open up a cybersecurity company? What's that story?
Well, yeah, for me, he doesn't. So kind of get you full circle. Went into the Army, was a Green Beret, got out, got my degree in entrepreneurship, went back overseas to contract with some of the guys that were on my team.
Oh, okay.
And then when I got done with that, I'd actually come back to get surgery on my wrist, met my wife, started a leadership consulting company because I wasn't going to start a family and then just go live in another country all year long. And one of my clients at that time was my partner now, Jason Rory. He was running an MSP. I was helping him with a little bit of sales training, a little bit of cultural development and mission alignment within his firm. Fast forward 7 years down the line, I had started multiple businesses and varying degrees of success. He sold his MSP, had put on Facebook he was looking for a veteran to help with sales. I help with a ton of veteran nonprofits. So I was like, hey, dude, send me a job description. I'll find you the guy that you're looking for. 30 days down the line, he was like, why don't you come help me? So I did, started networking and making some connections. 6 months later, we partnered up and he gave me the COO title, and we've been growing like wildfire. So that's how I ended up getting here. I am not your cyber expert. I'm pretty transparent about that.
Yeah.
But I do understand what it takes to get an organization to buy in to the changes that need to happen in order to make sure that you're protected.
Well, when you think about a CEO or a COO, and I've had some intimate training with Green Berets and Navy SEALs, and as I speak with them and I just kind of see how their mind works and their brain ticks, and it's because of their training. It is that of a CEO or a COO, right? And so when you look at your expertise in leadership, team building, public speaking, sales, networking, operations, problem solving, organization, communication, and then as just like a sidebar, competitive and combat shooting, which is cool, right? That really rounds you out to be a leader in the company, And leadership is not an expertise that should be taken lightly, but if anybody can claim it, I feel like Green Berets can. So can you speak to the training that you went through? And I'll also say that I saw a little tiny sliver of it, right? And that was through a program called Apex Evolution. It's only in existence for 2 years. One of my friends, Zach Hughes, ran that. And it was interesting because it was a 24-hour deal, and they put us through all kinds of training. They put us through land navigation and all this cool stuff. It just gave me such an appreciation for not only how you guys are trained, but how we as business owners can translate that to the civilian life, right? How you as operators can translate that to civilian life, and how well some of y'all do that. And like in terms of leadership, in terms of even divisional leadership or executive leadership, I feel like most business owners, especially medium to large size businesses, should be looking for that background. That would help their business greatly, especially if there's no one in leadership that has that background. So can you speak to the training that you received and kind of how you use it in your business today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the most unknown piece of special operations training is that you're told you're not special over and over and over again, that it's a team effort. Humility is a big part of it, that it's just kind of ground into you. If you can get to that place where you're just constantly trying to learn from other people and help, make sure that you carry your own weight so nobody else has to pick up your slack, and look for work where you can fill holes and help other people out. That's the foundation of a good team. A leader is somebody that just doesn't stop serving the team, as far as I can tell. Beyond that, there's a lot of refinement in some of the tools, like how you communicate, when, why, who you're talking to, being a master of your craft. If you're expecting other people to be a master, you better be willing to get in the weeds with them. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff is pretty basic. But I think that at the center of everything is, if you've got an ego that says, I'm the one that did this, I'm the important person, listen to me, I think you're missing the boat. I think you've gone from leadership to management with kind of an authoritative attitude. And you don't get followers based on love or with that type of attitude. You get followers based on fear, and they will leave as soon as it's possible for them to do so. And they'll do just enough work not to get fired.
Man, I want to pause right there and just appreciate that for a second. What you said, that's when you go from leadership to management, when you start looking for the praise, when you start stroking that ego. And it's the truth. You see it in Fortune 100 all the time. I've consulted for a few companies now, some of them very small, where a lot of leadership is happening. And then some of them, also small, where a lot of management's happening, where it's a dictatorship. And, I'm the best salesman in the company, so you can't tell me nothing, And it's like, well, you're not supposed to be the best salesman. You're supposed to be the CEO. You know what I mean? And then all the way up to, consulted for a Fortune 100 that it was true leadership. It was like, hey, if I need to answer the phones, I'll answer the phones. If I see a pain point in the company, I'm going to go to that pain point and solve it as quickly as I can, whether it's me doing the work or I'm delegating or, whatever the case is. And that was just true leadership. And so I also love what you said about you are not special. My middle son is me reincarnated. Okay. Stubborn, bullheaded, ambitious, a little crazy, and big ego for a 13-year-old. And so I probably tell him once a week, you are not special. The world does not think you are special. And even when you prove it to the world that you are special, if you act like that, then you're going to have a problem with me. I don't care if you're 40, or 14. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so, and I'm developing a training right now for a client. And one of the courses in the training is You Are Not Special, because so much of his teams is 19 to 22-year-olds. And if there's a demographic right now that thinks they are special in the world, it's 19 to 22-year-olds. And so, and of course, I don't just go into it and berate them for thinking that. It's more of a compliment sandwich, right? Like, you made it on the team. You're here for a reason. You have talent, right? Now it's time to put the work in, because if you don't put the work in, you really won't be special, you know? And there will be people with way less talent putting the work in that will come out ahead of you. And so that humility piece, I feel like if we're going to have to pound it into the younger generation, you know what I mean? Just like it was probably pounded into us through life experience, because when I was in my 20s, I was special.
Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
got in my 30s and I got humbled and I realized, oh, I'm not.
Mhm.
But let's compress that for him, yeah?
Yeah.
So what else can you say that you like to bring over from that training into your businesses now?
Well, Green Berets specifically, right? SEALs kick a lot of doors, Force Recon dig a lot of holes and just watch everybody. But Green Berets, you have to go raise a fighting force with people that you don't know.
Yeah.
So they teach us how to build rapport, is what they call it. The business world calls it sales. Kids call it making friends. I think that's really at the core of all of it is, yeah, there's professional activities that need to happen, right? But and just like in my case with getting into this business, who I know got me in the door. What I know or what I'm able to learn and deliver on is what keeps me from getting fired. I think sales is the same way. If you're somebody's friend for 6 phone calls and then they sign and never hear from you again, pretty obvious you're transactional. The authenticity and building rapport and being genuinely interested in the next human instead of the next deal has served me very, very well. It takes longer for a sales cycle, that's for sure. But it lasts a lot longer too.
It's tough because, a lot of the clients that I work with are very short-term products, for instance, like a solar sale. To complete the sale is 6 weeks, so it's a long sales cycle. But once it's complete, there's nothing else you can offer the customer other than warm and fuzzies, like, thank you for being a customer. And so a lot of salespeople will just drop the relationship at that point, and they're missing out on referrals. They're missing out on the relationship long-term where they can check in on them once a year and maybe get a brother or an aunt or an uncle or a cousin. I believe in the relationship building so much though I'd rather sell products that require a relationship to be built in order to sell them. Like you were saying, longer sales cycle, 6 calls, and maybe you close them, maybe you don't, maybe you close them a year later, but that's part of your plan, right? You're thinking all the way through. I really didn't learn what the Green Berets did until I did that evolution, and I had a sidebar with Zach and he walked me through it, and it was just cool as shit. There's no other way to say it. You know what I mean? The way that you guys go in, learn the culture, learn the community, learn who the players are, and basically guarantee safe passage for your guys, or like you said, raise partners in that region, so you can move the way you want to move. It's impressive. Okay, so I went to college for like 1 semester and then dropped out. I think a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to that. We didn't really fit in the education system, right? But you were a graduate of the Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship. What is that? What is the Wolf Center?
It's named the Wolf Center after Melvin and Sylvia Wolf. They started Star Furniture and then sold it to Berkshire Hathaway. So that's why their name is on it. Essentially, it's the entrepreneurship program inside of the University of Houston. So it's the number 1 undergraduate degree program in the nation for entrepreneurship.
Very cool.
It's 40 kids or less. I think they're down to only letting 25 in every year these days. 60 to 80 hours a week. You start multiple businesses while you're in there. A lot of your courses are lunch and learns with business owners that fly in to tell you whatever piece they're going to tell you about their business. And you work on, like I had a business there where we were doing a subscription box for vape juice back when vaping first started. I had a business where they gave us a piece of intellectual property from the University of Houston, and we were trying to figure out how to filter out sulfur from natural gas wells. And we could pick that up and own the equity out of it. So it's a lot of hands-on experience. And then you get kind of one class on every big piece of business. So you get a revenue class, a cost class, sales and marketing, leadership, purpose, capital. So you work all the financial statements, but you do it with an operational mindset.
Mhm.
right? And timing is a big thing. And then you just rinse and repeat through multiple business scenarios and
Yeah.
solutions. And then you learn the startup scene. You learn the difference between all the different types of capital funding, what a fast VC invested startup would be versus a lifestyle business versus a family business. What
Mhm.
time does it take to grow? What equity percentages are real? And then I got a really cool internship while I was doing that, working with Mercury Fund, which is a venture capital firm here in town, and got to see a lot of deal flow from the investor side. So it was amazing. I still go back and help them out with their Wolf Fest and their leadership course every once in a while. The Wolf
That's
Fest is
awesome.
interesting.
Is that like a pitch event or?
No, they have some pitch events, but Wolf Fest is basically they turn the big park, foyer, whatever you want to call it, main green area in the middle of campus into a 3-day outside restaurant. So they get sponsorships from other restaurants, they get in-kind donations, regular donations, and then they raise anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million in 3 days, and they fund their own program to take trips to ring the bell at Wall Street and go to Silicon Valley and
Nice.
do things like that. And it's a big competition. So where you place is your grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I love that. That's the
Yeah.
reality of the business world, right? Pay by performance. Okay. Thank you for walking us through that. I'm always curious when I see a school like that for entrepreneurship. You know, obviously when I was younger, it was very much like, hey, I'm from the school of hard knocks. We learn out in the field. You know what I mean? And now that I'm working with a Fortune 100 company, it's like there's so much that I don't know or know how to communicate in their terms, you know? And I feel like
Yeah.
it sounded like you learned a lot of that from that Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you get enough to be dangerous. It's not an MBA by any means.
Yeah.
You know, the sophistication isn't the same as an MBA, but you know enough to get in the room. And then as long as you're smart enough to shut your mouth and listen, you'll be okay.
Absolutely. So I got to ask about this because I was flipping through your Facebook pictures like I do every guest that I have on because I always want to bring something personal into it, you know? And
Yeah.
this was the coolest one I saw. You're literally like kissing a wolf, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so tell me how in the world this opportunity even came about. I mean, you don't own wolves, do you?
No, I wish, but
Oh,
no.
okay.
Yeah, it's hard to own wolves. So
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah.
this is a like a nature preserve wolf rescue that's out
Okay.
in Colorado. And a lot of the wolves that they have are from folks that tried to own wolves and figured out very quickly that that's not a good idea. So we went to go visit a buddy of mine who I met through the Mighty Oaks Foundation, another veteran, retired firefighter and colonel. Lives off the grid on the backside of the Sangre Mountains and the Wet Mountains. Right across the ridge is this wolf preserve. And we got to go sit in the cages with the wolves and feed them a little bit. And they told us that the way wolves come find out whether you're a friend or foe is they got to smell your nose and they got to lick your teeth, because your teeth tell the story of where you've been according to a wolf. That's
Wow.
how they taste all the food you've eaten and who you've talked to and what other wolves you've, met and all that kind of stuff. So when they come up, if you recoil when they go to lick your teeth, they think you don't like them, and then they won't come anywhere near you. But when they come up, you just show your teeth and grab their throat. You don't like grab it, but you kind of pet them and you let them lick their teeth, and then they think, oh, this person's friendly and he shared his stories with me and we're good to go. So I don't have an affinity for making out with wolves. That's just how they get to know you.
There was a tactical reason you let them
Yes.
to keep your
Yes.
head.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I can imagine these people that buy wolves for the notoriety or the publicity of it, and we're not taught that. You know, can you imagine not having that education and then going into a cage with what you think is your wolf?
Well, and they're meant to roam and hunt, and
Yeah.
you can't domesticate them like a dog. They're going to kill whatever they want to kill. That's what they do.
Yeah, and sometimes even dogs do that. So
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way with my son brought home a stray, and of course he convinced my wife to keep it. And the first thing it did was kill 6 of our chickens. So yeah, at the end of the day, they're animals until they're not. Okay, so let's walk it back to your business a little bit. I had to show that off real quick because not everybody's got that picture or the balls to get that picture. So I thought that was pretty cool. So you've got a business that and I'm guilty of this. I hear the words and I'm like, whew, right over my head. And I'm very much like, well, I'm a small business. What does that have to do with me? So can you walk us through your business and how it applies to small businesses, medium and obviously medium and large businesses, it's even more paramount, but just walk us through some of the finer points, if you don't mind.
Yeah, ultimately, we're a strategic consulting firm for cybersecurity. What that really means, brass tacks, is we have two major core functions. We deal with getting folks ready for a compliance audit. So like SOC 2 is an acronym for a compliance audit that's being required of more and more companies based on what insurance wants to see to make sure you're insurable for cybersecurity insurance, right? CMMC is the government standard, ISO 27001's international, HIPAA, blah, 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 right? Acronym, depending on your industry. That process can take anywhere between 8 months to 18 months to get ready for all that, because it's a lot of paperwork and evidence gathering and training and all types of things. So we're there as a Sherpa. If you look at a compliance audit like Mount Everest, you've got to hike up it. But doing that by yourself without somebody who's experienced, you can lead to a world of disaster. So we're a hired Sherpa. When you get to the strategic side of things, I find that in the cybersecurity world, there is a lot of folks that are basically doing the chicken little. The sky is falling. Your company's going to die tomorrow if you don't get everything that we sell. And that's just not the case. Like statistically, it's not the case. This is important. You do need to do something about it. But that's why you hire an expert. And our goal is to not just talk acronyms and tech with you, but to really translate what that means when it comes to protection and budget. So, what is right for your business right now? We target the small to medium business sector because typically they don't have the budget for a stack of analysts, a full stack of software, and a chief information security officer. So like any other fractional, we sell that service on a fractional basis. We can bring software to bear to do that. And then we've got a couple of auxiliary things. Like for enterprise, we have our own academy. So since they have all the staff and the software, what we can do is build a training program for them from a cyber specific standpoint, get them certed up based on what they're trying to do in the organization. And then we do a little bit of government contracting that we're getting ready to get into as a sub. I think it's the direction we're going to go first. So what that means for a really small business, if you're a solopreneur, you don't need me. I'm too expensive, right? And you don't need that level of strategy. What may be worth it to you is to buy like an hour of consulting so we can go over the top 10 things that you do need. Make sure that you have insurance, make sure that you have a password protection, make sure you've got multi-factor authentication set up, and yada, yada, yada. If you're kind of between that $5 and $50 million small business, then it's a decent option depending on what a gap assessment looks like. That really tells the tale. We work by, with, and through MSPs, which if you don't know what those are your managed service providers, your IT guys that set up your firewall on your computer. There's always a little bit of a push-pull between a security perspective and an operational perspective when it comes to tech. So we bring balance to that equation to make sure that everything's running smoothly and securely at the same time. Typically, that just means a little bit more of a deliberate pace, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for your budget either. In the medium-sized businesses, we go all out. Not just from a security standpoint, but our ultimate goal is to take cybersecurity from a cost center and build it into a revenue generating center. So take one of those SOC 2 audits, right? The enterprise level companies, their insurance may say, we want all your vendors to be SOC 2 certified. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're a vendor for enterprise level companies, or you want to be, we can get you the right audits or the right security measures you need in order to make it on their vendor list. We want to make sure that what you're doing cybersecurity wise is marketable outside against your competitors, because everyone is concerned about their information these days. And then the last thing we do is we bring insurance partners and law firms to the table to go, what is your minimum requirements? And once we start exceeding those minimum requirements, what kind of credits do we get back on the insurance policy? Yeah. And that's huge. Really try to just make it so you're not, I think IT and cyber seems like you're just throwing money down the drain because you don't see it. I tell people this all the time. Physical security is a really easy sell because you can see the dude, you can see the bars, you can see the locks, you can see the cameras every day. With cybersecurity, if we're doing our job right, you don't ever see anything because we don't interrupt your business. It makes it very hard to have that long-term retained value impression. And so, I mean,
I see it from a sales perspective, right? So first of all, if you want government contracts, a lot of them you can't even get if you don't have the proper cybersecurity in place. So that makes a ton of sense to me from just a functional standpoint, right? But when you look at your your business, you have to treat it like it's its own human being, right? And imagine its social security, its transactions, its sensitive information, proprietary information, these things that make your company can be stolen, right? Any given time, I'm walking down the street, I got a wallet in my back pocket, right? So does your business, and that can be stolen. And so it makes a ton of sense to me from that standpoint. And it's one of those things when you get older, you start getting life insurance, you start getting the home alarm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You start paying attention to the room and the things around you, because you've seen enough or you've heard enough or your friends have had enough happen to them that you're like, oh, I have to be on alert 24/7. We just do. The world is a dangerous place. And a lot of times your average American never experiences that, right? But if you pay attention, you're experiencing it every day. You have to have your antenna up for it, right? So in my mind, when it comes to insurance is a great example, right? Because right now I have an insurance plan through Humana, right? And if I submit to them a certain workout plan or that I completed or weight loss or something like that, they may reduce my premiums next year. So the same thing happens in business security, especially in medium-sized businesses. So that's the way I kind of relate to it and I think about it, and it makes a ton of sense. Now, that challenge that you just spoke about is real, right? Where if you don't see us, we're doing our job, so it's hard to quantify that, right? So how do you upfront somebody knows they need cybersecurity. Maybe they want to give it a government contract or, maybe their insurance is requiring it. In that first conversation, how do you translate that value?
That's an interesting question.
Well, this is more on the sales side, right? So your
Yeah,
first sales call is essentially
yeah.
what's happening, your discovery call.
I would say it's a matter of qualification.
Mhm.
What I've found, and this isn't always true, but most of the time, if you don't know you need us or you need a whole lot of education and I'm having to try and convince you, you're not qualified.
Okay.
You don't have the need yet, right? That's why typically most of our client engagements start with a compliance project because it's the most visible pain.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Once we can establish a relationship, we can establish some trust, and then the education starts to stick, right? And the further education, the basics of, we had a ransomware event or somebody hijacked a transaction or my buddy's business just got hammered or whatever it was, the scare that got them to the table. That's not what keeps a client. What keeps a client is constant value, ongoing support and education. So that's where all of our marketing and media comes in, right? If you're not ready, I've got a newsletter, I've got a website, I've got social media, do webinars, do podcasts like this, right? So there's all kinds of DIY solutions that we're putting out there, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to go pro, then let's go pro.
Right? Yeah, and that honestly is one of the most rewarding sales tactics, and unfortunately sales tactics is a bad word now. People have demonized it, but that is what it is. It's very much the attraction model. Like, hey, I'm giving it away for free. I'm giving you what to do, whether you do it with me or not. Mm-hmm. Now, if you, like you said, you want to go pro, you're going to do it with me because this is what I do, right? If you want to just solve the problem, plug the hole, then you can do that. I'll give you an opportunity to do that through education. But if you want to repair it and reinforce it and get it to where it's not going to happen 99% of the time, then they're going to go with you, right? I guess in terms of the upsell, and I understand the concept of I'm not going to do it unless they qualify for it. What does that look like for you? What are those premium products that you guys offer that make sense for some companies?
Well, a VC sale engagement, no, they're never the same, right? Because no company is the same. And when we get involved, even if it's the same industry, same size company, same state, the gap assessment is usually very different, right? So all of that plays a big piece. And I would say that for us, there really is never any upsell, right? There's a custom solution. There's a custom solution and there's an evolving program.
Oh, I got you.
Right. So look at a compliance project. We get you SOC 2 certified. Well, then the auditor is going to come back. We need to put you on a compliance as a service program. But ideally, that compliance as a service program should be less than your SOC 2 project because we're not having to build the wall. We're just having to maintain it. But compliance is not the same thing as security. So if you
Right.
want to start looking internally, take a different perspective, start talking about insurance credits, start talking about marketability and things of that nature, then let's do that. Right. It also depends on the involvement of the company and the MSP that's supporting them. How willing are you to spend some time on a call with one of our CISOs every week or every month until we get where we want to go and get to a deliberate pace? So all of that plays a factor. How fast they're growing. Do they want to grow? Some folks just want to, it's a lifestyle business, right? They've grown it. It's $10 million a year. They just want to keep it there and make sure nobody's in their pockets. I get that, right? But we're not trying to upsell you. We're trying to educate you so that you can tell us what to do. I tell folks all the time, we don't drive your bus. I want to sit in the seat next to you while you're driving your bus. And if you have a question on which way to turn or how fast to go, I'm happy to be there to give you those answers. But you're in charge.
Like butter, guys. It's like butter, what you're hearing right now. I love it because it's an indifferent sale. The most sales I've done recently has been consulting. And the last 10 or so of those sales, I don't need the sale. You know, it's very much like I have my main clients, I have my base, and I have other opportunities, rev share, stuff like that. So I got to a very comfortable place, and it's not wild. It's what I know to be true. I started closing more, and I started closing more because I was indifferent and I didn't need the sales. So I acted that way. So if you can find a way to channel that when you do need the sale, you're going to be in good shape, you know? But this is what I talk about all the time. Education, 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 right? That's all we're there to do within any sale so that they can make an educated decision. And we can hope all day long it's for our products, but if it's not, it's on to the next one. You know, you did your job. Everybody thinks their job is closing, and no, your job is education and recommendation of what you think is best for that customer. If you genuinely do that, you're going to be successful in sales. Or if you just offer them the same product over and over again, jam it down their throats, you may be successful, but that success is not going to last very long, and you're going to have a lot of unhappy people, and eventually the piper's got to get paid, you know? And so I love what you're saying. I love the philosophy around this. And so I would like to wrap up with kind of your, you know, you talked about your story a lot, you know, and so I know we probably don't have time for the whole thing, but I would love to hear a piece of it, because one of the last questions I ask is around legacy, and I would imagine the two, your story and legacy, are related.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah, the Cliff Notes. Okay, well, let's just see if we can kick this chicken. I grew up in Katy, Texas, in a middle-class family, and I wanted for nothing. I have good parents. I have great family. Nobody's really even been divorced. And in the year 2000, I turned 16, and life smacked me in the face. I lost 6 family members, and my best friend hung himself from a swing set. And at that point, my heart hardened, and I got really angry. I didn't want to go to school anymore. I ended up graduating by the grace of God and my parents, because they reached out to a friend who was on the education board, put me in this thing called School of Choice, where I was able to do a year and a half worth of high school credits in a matter of 2-3 months.
Wow.
And then kind of bounced around from this to that and ended up joining the Army because I was searching for something bigger than myself. And they had a program where you could join and try out directly for Special Forces. And my ego said, too easy.
I'm special.
Yeah. So went and did basic training in infantry school and went to airborne school. And they tell you when you get there, you need to get out of the bird 5 times and you need to have 4 good landings. And that's exactly what I did. I landed in kind of a pothole on my 5th jump and shattered my left ankle. I ended up with 10 screws and a plate in there. And after 9 months of healing and rehab, I ended up getting back in shape and made it through selection and ended up making it through the Q course and got on a team. And the team I got put on was stellar. Our team sergeant was a mountain of a man and just had tons of experience. Had just like 20 plus years of Special Forces experience. So they sent us to Firebase Cobra, which was surrounded. You couldn't drive there. You had to fly in and out, because if you tried to drive in, they'd just ambush you and kill you. So we got into a lot of fights, saw a lot of stuff, and saw a lot of bravery and courage and sacrifice from my team members and the Afghani counterparts that we worked with, the ones that weren't terrorists. And came back glittered with shiny medals for dark days done well. Ended up going to school and got into Austin Community College because my high school degree was GPA was really horrible. That was a big letdown, you know, going from a high performing environment to being in the classroom full of a bunch of kids that didn't want to be there. I just didn't know what to do with myself.
I complain about the people who leave their shopping carts. I can't even imagine going from the Green Berets to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the hardest part for me was not trusting the people around me like I trusted my brothers. I had to unlearn that behavior. I had to stop looking at all Americans like the Americans I had worked with and start looking at them like the Afghani or Iraqi counterparts. Mm-hmm. But I ended up transferring to U of H and stumbled upon Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship and excelled there. It was another small group, high performing, high demanding. The willingness to try and fail was there, just like it was back in my old unit. And so that was refreshing. But I did grow tired of kind of being political and putting on a face. So a month before I graduated, my old team sergeant called and said, "Hey, ISIS is getting bad. We've got a contract and I need a medic. Can you come work this contract?" Mm-hmm. I said, "As long as you let me finish my course so I can graduate, I'm good." And a month later, I was in Iraq. We lived there for 2 years, started off training a bunch of folks and ended up working with the general staff and the presidential cabinet and Department of State, Department of Defense, and a bunch of spec ops teams, and just kind of being the stability within the bureaucracy that was there. Mm-hmm. We were the old guys. They called us the expendables all the time because we were just the old guys that knew everybody.
And that was contract work? That was contract? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that was with General Dynamics. So I ended up hurting my wrist and had to come back to get surgery. And that's when I met my wife. And as soon as I met her, I knew that she was the one. Don't know how to explain that to anybody other than that's the way it was. So I decided I wasn't going back and I had to figure out what to do. And I had started a few companies in school. And so I started a leadership consulting company, did that for a little while. Ended up piddling around and had an outdoor remodel company and was doing all that. And COVID kind of smashed my outdoor remodel company. Mm-hmm. I got really jaded doing leadership. I liked the coaching stuff, but I found that most people wanted to hire somebody to either give a rah-rah speech or convince their boss that they were right. And instead of growing through that, I just took it on the face and was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
So I kept my company, but I didn't do anything with it. During COVID, I just went out on my back patio, lit a cigarette and stayed there for 3 years. And I started having a pity party and going through my PTSD and all that. And it took my wife calling the PTSD Foundation one day after I'd thrown a hissy fit and telling me, "Hey, you need to go work on your shit or you need to get out of my house." And I was like, "Bet, I'm going to work on my stuff tonight." And going to those warrior groups that run kind of like an Alcoholic Anonymous group where you sit in a circle and you don't have to talk if you don't want to. I just sat and listened, and I'll tell you what, talk about humbling. I've had an amazing life. Some of them dudes have been beat down since they were babies, and the world has never given them a shot. And what an asshole I was to think that I was having a rough time. Make a long story short, I ended up working for the PTSD Foundation, ended up getting reconnected to church and God through that. And, I like to say that my wife saved my life. The PTSD Foundation helped me turn my life, and my faith ended up giving me my life back, giving me a purpose. And that was 2.5 years ago. And now I'm back at it. I teach shooting. I help run events at the church. I'm in their leadership program. I'm in the leadership program at Mighty Oaks. I help run and Triad InfoSec. Got 2 beautiful kids, 4 dogs, 20 chickens, and a happy home. God is good.
The chickens are the cherry on top, man.
That's it, dude.
I've got chickens.
Eggs are expensive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We're looking like geniuses right now.
Yeah, that's right.
I got 4 dozen sitting on my counter right now, and probably another dozen ready to eat with some steak tonight.
That's it, dude. Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing your story with us. That's amazing. I love a good underdog story. And a lot of guys don't make it off that back patio, so I'm glad you did. All right, brother. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us and your business. Sales philosophies is what we'll call them, right? What's beautiful about it is it's just a natural operating system. It's not really a sales process or it's just your natural operating system. It's like, tell me your pain point. I'm going to solve for it. You know what I mean? And you can take it or leave it, this is what I think you should do. But like you said, you're next to him on the bus. You're just navigating, And so I appreciate you sharing that with us and coming on the show. And guys, in the notes will be links to Josh's website, as well as hopefully he'll share some of the nonprofit links that he's a part of with us as well. And so you guys can get involved with those too. Thanks again for coming on the show, brother.
It's been a pleasure, bro.
All right, guys, let's get building.